So in this video, I want to talk about making, I don't know what the word would be, sort of a layout or how to create objects for a tool called Mozilla Hubs. Basically, we're going to be exporting GLBs, GLTF to this VR-based chat room. And so Hubs is this kind of place where you can upload models, you can have access to Sketchfab. There's some tutorials online. There's some Twitch videos that show how to do it. Basically, though, you can make objects or worlds and import them into a tool called Spoke, which is sort of a world builder for Hubs that will let you let me open this full screen. You have to have an account, and when you upload this, you're going to upload it online. So you can create different objects in Blender, import them into Hubs, and here I'll show this one. This is a recreation of the Parthenon, the Acropolis. And it's got a couple of statues, different things. But the thing to know about Hubs is that there's no scripting per se. There's the ability to create your own scripts, but there's pretty intensive knowledge to try to get that built or compiled, because there's no obvious way to insert scripting. It's all based on A-frame and 3JS. But it's sort of limited because they want to create a kind of closed sandbox for all of the features that are sort of embedded in Hubs. So this is an example of objects that have been modeled in different 3D software and imported into Hubs. And then I'm going to go into how this works, but I just wanted to sort of give you an idea of where we're headed while we're planning this out in Blender. One of the main things to know, though, is like in order to place people or for people to log into this chat room once it's uploaded to Hubs, you've got these little things called spawn points. And you have to place those in the scene. And once your character's in there, they're going to use some sort of a collision mesh or walkable floor plan in order to navigate around this space. They could fly too, but if you want to force them to, or to walk, because they'll end up being in VR, and teleport, you need sort of a collision mesh so that you can tell them how to collide with this world. The trick is you don't want to make every object you import collidable, because like here we have a roof and we may not want to be able to land on that roof. We may want to limit them to just sort of being able to walk in specific places while still being able to see the more detailed objects in the scene. So in order to do that, we're going to we use this floor plan object in Hubs or in Spoke, but we also have this walking collision mesh, which I have hidden. This blue thing, and that's the mesh that we designate as collidable and walkable. And it's a much simpler mesh than the rest of this, so it's a little bit more efficient. Okay, so we're going to go and plan this out. Let me go backwards. I'm just trying to get to where this doesn't eat up my... there we go. So I can close that. I don't want to have any 3D stuff running in the background that will mess with the video. All right, so we can start. I suggest if you're going to do something in Hubs, and in this case I have a very specific project in mind that you want to build to scale. Each one of these grid squares represents a meter. So this is a 2x2 meter platform. You want to plan out your worlds, and you could model the entire thing in Hubs, but one of the nice things about Hubs is that, or model the whole thing in Blender and import it into Hubs. One of the nice things about Hubs is that you can also link to YouTube videos and all kinds of content on the fly. So some things you may want to build in here, other things you may want to add in Spoke, other things you may want to actually just pull in to the scene in real time when you're actually in Hubs. So what we're going to do is we're going to plan out this walking path with the idea that I'm sort of constructing a walking presentation to take people through. And there's not going to be a whole lot of thought about this, but I just want to show you that having a plan in terms of what you want to build for the space in Hubs, how you want to limit the space, can save some time. So we're going to make this platform. Let's make it relatively big because this will be where we start our scene. And then we can go into Edit. I'm going to split this up so that we create some walkways off of it. So I'm just going to do an insert edge loop, and I want to double that so that it sort of divides in two, and then the same thing on the other direction. So now we'll have some walkways that are 2 meters wide, all walking off of this platform. Another thing we can do is we could select these edges, and if we wanted to round this thing out, I'm not saying we have to, but if we wanted to, we could just pull them in like that to create a different type of shape. And by the way, in Spoke, there is a series of kind of a kit bash tool that is called the architecture kit. We'll show that in a minute. But I wanted to show you how to do the build out of your own scene without having to go and rely on some other tools. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and apply like a checkered material to make this thing a little bit easier to look at. So we will add material, make it like a checker tile, and all you have to do that is go to Add Texture, Checker Texture, then just wire that up to the base color. Let's see. We have some issues in terms of the mapping. We'll fix the UV mapping before we leave, but we'll leave it like that for now. I think that's going to be okay. Go back to modeling. Look at it in shaded mode. That gives us a check to work with, so we kind of get a sense of scale, because one of these is a little bit bigger than a meter. Actually, let's scale the texture down to in shading, and I want to show the grid. There we go. That way we can scale this to where one of these squares is roughly a meter. So you can see the bigger grid line. It's just a little bit big right now, so maybe 6. And I think that's going to do it. Go into 6. You can see where it's contiguous with these. It's barely visible, but this grid line there. So that's basically one of these. At this scale, one check is a meter. So that should work. We'll go to modeling, and we are in modeling mode, which I want to be in. Select by face, and basically we can extrude our path. So let's say this is my central platform that I want to land on, and I want to be able to walk in specific directions. So I will extrude a walkway that's this many meters long. Like I said, I'm not being too particular. And then maybe I have an alternate path going this way, and another one going this way. in this way. Now, it may be that I don't want all this to be on the same level, so I may want to have levels at different, have a slope from one to another, but maybe I don't want to like break the slope right off of the edge, so I can take these and then subdivide here, 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 and then select, maybe I want to create a spiral effect where I create this column, so I'm going to take just trying to plan out how to do this. If we go to the points and these, let's just see what happens if I rotate. I didn't have my X-ray mode on, so I need to be able to select all of the faces. So if I do that, I get a slight angle. So maybe what I want to do, could do this in R, just those points, and scale them a little bit bigger to make up the difference. And maybe one goes up. Notice that messes up my projection because I'm not actually using UVs right now. It's doing the object space. It's alright. We can fix that. And one goes down. And then we can go in the opposite direction with this one. I think, yeah, in the opposite. Well, let's see. This one I would want to go up so that it's out of the way of this, and this one I would want to go down. Yeah. So yeah, I could make it come under, and it starts to get some weird kind of spatial logic. So you're probably thinking, like, what is this guy doing? And I would plan this out normally if I wanted to get it just right, but I'm not being too careful. I don't really care too much. Just trying to get things roughly the same width. And then let's see, this one will go down to get to the same level. So let's go to F2. Yeah, this line. We'll have them at the same level but different places. And then this one, F2, goes up to this level in different places. Okay. And then that way, this one will go under this platform, and this one will go under this one. So let's fix our checks real quick. If we go to shading, this texture, you can just hit let's see, Control T, because I have Node Wrangler on, and instead of doing generated, I may want to do object. Let's check. Nope. I could do UV, but I'll have to go and project them. Let's see. I'm just trying to get a, what is normal? Nope. It's actually kind of interesting. I kind of like that in that it creates this weird reflected mapping, and I can actually project from that onto a different UV if I bake. I sort of dig that actually, and maybe I want to play with that. But for now, let's see. Camera, we'll create sort of a similar thing, but it's being projected from this camera. Which if I take and modify that just to look down, because I don't really care about the camera. Let's go set it to 0, 0. We'll leave it at that height, and then set this to 0. I'm just changing the rotations, and then I'll rotate it to look straight down. Actually, it already does. And if we go to look at it from the camera view, you can see how it projects. And if I make that camera orthographic, yeah. Anyway, yeah, that may end up making us sick at some point. So let's go back, select this, and we will do just generated for now. And see where that leads us. Alright, so let's make these extra platforms. I don't want to make this video too long, so let's go to modeling. Yeah, we're in edit mode, which is good. So this one will be below, and maybe I want to take another face off of it. Let's see, look at it from the top. Find this out. So I want to show you a trick about modeling. We could basically just slice this and keep the angle in. So take our knife tool right here and just drag. Oops. What I want to do is hold it, constrain it on the Y or X. Let's see. Start the click, hit Y. Nope. That's close enough. But that made a cut that then if I tried to extrude off that would go at a weird angle. Which could work if I wanted to do a weird slope for like an impossible space, but I want to keep this, so I'm going to just take it straight out from that. So extrude, and instead of extruding, I can do that, and then just move position wise however I like. And let's see, which way do I want to go with this? Let's do and swap position. We can fix that in a minute. I'll show you how real quick. You basically want to, right now we've got this straight angle going like that. Doesn't really matter. It's like we can continue this face out like this. Just do an extrude to create more angle, and then come back and just merge these points at the end. So it'd be merge at last, and the same on the bottom. And then we can take these and do whatever we want with them to make it the right angle, the right shape. and then use the slide tool, vertex slide, to grab one of these and just move it, and then the same with the other to get it lined up. Something like that, so you can make a platform, or same width walkway. Not that that's super important, but it's useful. Let's look at this in wireframe. Yeah, they're pretty lined up, but not quite. So you can go and just move that into the right position, and then grab both of these from this position, just slide them around. And same this way. And then we'll figure out where to go from there in a sec. Let's take this one and extrude. I'm just going to go straight this way and then that way. So we'll go to F3 and just shift it. Then we can just flatten it. Not that way. Flatten it this way. Scale it to 0 so it's on the cardinal axis. And then I can just select that face, extrude the platform bigger that way, and if I wanted to come this way, I could go that way too. And then for that matter, I could even make this like a hole. We'll make this a bigger one. And then extrude. So what I'll do is I'll line these points up from the top. Show you how this works. W or F3. I want to, and then just grab these points, move them like that. So there'll be a little like hole. This is going to be a platform that sits over the top. And then extrude this face. W. This one. Do another. We'll straighten that out in a minute. But the one we're interested in here is this one. So if we extrude, and I can grab these points, just line them up. Not quite straight here, but you get the idea. And what we can do is just pull these off tad, so we can see we want to delete these faces interior, and zoom in on that and that, pull that out. Oops. And then what we'll do is select both of these interior faces, delete them, and then we can grab the vertice. Let's do the bottom one here. That one, and snap it to that. Merge vertices at last, so it snaps. Same thing there. Now they're joined up. There's a little bit of collision in it, but it's okay. And the same thing here. And maybe we want this to have a bit of an angle, like that, whatever. I'm going to merge this one to there too. This might come out this way, so we can make another platform going out there. I'll leave maybe that. Maybe there's one going there. Going off there. That's good enough for now. Actually, I'll go ahead and extend that walkway. I don't have to build this thing out to the nth degree, but I do want to show kind of like something a little more complex to give you an idea of how to build that. So maybe this one then goes up while this one maybe stays at the same level. So what we're really starting to do here is create this notion of branching paths that will have content at each level and then ways of branching off, but at the same time by putting them at different heights we're sort of hiding what is what we can see from one level to the other. So maybe here it goes down a little bit but not much, and this one now we can go ahead and model, make another platform. This one I'm going to make pretty simple. I'm just going to extrude this as a platform down below, and extrude this off a little bit that way. One of these I want to extrude that way. Yeah, we'll do the same thing. Extrude, and then maybe on this one I'll pull it back this way. And maybe I want to make like a wall to obscure something here. So like I can do this and do another extrude, just a tiny one. Extrude this up. And you're like, well, why would I do that? Well, maybe I don't want anything to be able to be seen from this, from over here. I don't want to be able to see what's going on over there. So what I can do, and I'm going to show you this in a sec. Let's make a blocker. And you're thinking, well, it's just a wall. It's kind of ugly now, but it doesn't have to be. I'll show you what I mean when I finish this other platform. So here and this way. And if you think about this, it's kind of like a museum with multi-floors, but no kind of rules about how it needs to be supported. So then I'll take this one and maybe make a long hallway this way. And then another walkway that comes back. And goes up to another platform. This will be the last one. Alright, so you're like, well, so what? Who cares? This isn't that interesting. It can get interesting, so I'm going to leave everything the way it is for now. What I do want to do is add a second material to the bottoms of things. So let's turn off X-ray. I'm just going to select all of these bottom sides. You don't have to do every bottom side, but I'm going to, just to kind of experiment. We can come back and change it later. And I'm going to do this obscuring wall in the same material. I'll show you why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a black material that has like no shading at all. So let's make a new material, call this dark black, and by black I mean like I don't want any speck on it at all, so I'm going to turn the specular down to 0, and then I'll assign it to all of those faces. And what that'll do is in a black background, and let me make my world background black just to kind of test this out. So if you go to the world, make this black, and then turn on scene world. Did I make that black, that material? Let's see. Yeah, it's full black. Oh, the roughness. Sheen. I guess I could try to match this instead with the material, the world, so let's do that. There we go. So then the idea is from certain angles you don't see anything, and then from others you do. Let me turn on the lights. Let's make it a world light. Turn on scene lights. And we'll make it a directional light. I'm in edit mode. Or a sunlight, I mean. Make it to brightness. And it's casting shadows, but I want it to cast soft shadows, so let's turn the angle down. Just to create some more edges. It's kind of interesting. And then my black works, so let's go back to the world, make it black. So now from certain angles, things can be seen, from others, they can't. Did I get that right? I think there must be, I must have missed a face here. Yeah, I did. So, sign that. Okay, now something else to consider. Let me go back and make my background a little bit more gray so we can see everything. Something else to consider here is that this checkerboard texture, I kind of like what it's doing. I like the way it breaks up the shapes, but it's not actually going to accomplish what I think I wanted to accomplish here, in that it's not going to export because it's procedural. So if I wanted it to export, I need to make a UV map for this object and map it to that. So let me make this last platform here. And then it means that I'll have to And maybe, yeah, because I can see things, I want to hide it from everything else. So what I can do is insert an edge loop, pull it to the corner, and extrude this face. Kind of tall. So then I can select that and apply the black. So it blocks, except for maybe up here where I can look down. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. It may even be that for some reason I want this to create its own ceiling, because I don't really have any right now, so I can just move that up. I don't know why, but you know, I'm not really thinking this too much, but I do like what's starting to happen with it. So however, I want to make this black. Maybe these edges too. Alright, so then we have all of this. Let's make sure we've got everything colored the way we want. I think so. Alright, so now we're, again, remember, we're mapping, select my check, we're mapping it based on generated. So it's got this weird UV map, right? And we can go ahead and scale these up if we want. And I kind of want to, because I want to make more checks. Then we get that. Let's see. I want to make them more square. Yeah. You get some weirdness here and there, but that's all right. I kind of like the weirdness. All right, so this is our level. Let's save. And we'll call this Wonderland. Okay, and now we need to figure out a way to get this checker texture as a map that will actually export in the GLB, because right now, like I said, this procedural generation stuff will not. And what I want to do then, if I want to do that, if I want to bake this, is first I need to get, go to UV mapping, go into X-ray mode, select all of my faces, and then UV and do a light map pack, selected faces. We're going to have an image size, let's call it 2048, so it's nice and big. Pack quality, and then a margin will be the spaces between the UVs. And what this will do is it's going to split everything up into its own face, like that. So that when we go to bake, this will be the UV map that we bake to, and we should get an image that maps to that. On top of that, we can probably get some lighting too. If we want to bake the shadows in, we could probably get that as well. And I think we do, because one of the things about hubs is that it doesn't, in some modes, it won't show lighting as a way of sort of increasing its ability to render faster for VR headsets. So what we can do is we can take the lighting and bake it. Okay, so after a lot of debugging, I figured out a couple of things that were going on that I was doing wrong. So what we had was this shader, and we were using a checker map. What I did is I just went ahead and rendered it out to a flat plane to create a checker texture that looks like, well, just a checker repeat. And then I've gone and created a top-down UV map projection. So if you want to see that, it's right now it's being forced from this UV map. So if we go to UV map editing, basically I just went and selected all of these, and I did under object, I apply all transforms to get everything set and scaled to 0 and 1 after all that extruding and stuff. Go back to edit mode, then go to F3 top down, and I created this new UV map, this top down UV project map, and just projected using the project from view like this. That scales and gets pretty small, and then from there I can scale it up, and I want to stay inside of this UV or the UV normal, so I want to rotate and I'm just trying to optimize the scale so that it fits in as big as possible, like that. And then if you go back to shading, you can see that I'm setting that top-down UV project as the source on the mapping from my standard just straight down check on a flat plane, scaling it to 5. And what I want to do to bake all of this lighting and everything to the proper map is I go to my UV map, go back to UV editing, make sure I have all of these faces selected, or alternatively I can do it individually and just select this one and hit bracket, select by material. See how this is all stretched out, and I should have some squares, some bigger squares in there if I map it correctly. So I want to go UV light map pack, selected faces, share texture space. I've got it set for a 2048 image size, and then I've got like a margin of 0.1. Select OK, and that'll lay out everything so that it doesn't stretch. So the sides will take up less space, etc. And then I can select this back face, do the exact same thing with all of the bottom stuff, do the same light map pack. It's going to be this size, but these are all black, so I don't really need them to be as big. So I'm going to scale them, scale them down pretty small and move them off. Now I can select everything so I can see where to put this. There's an empty space up here in the corner. So what the issue I was running into before is when I had done the mapping, because of the light, that transform wasn't set, it was causing issues with the overlap. Scale this. There we go. And you can see how it was creating all these distorted UV checker textures. Now I've got this is where it gets a little bit hard to know exactly what to do when you're baking. Alright, so I've got 2 UV maps right here, and I'll just show you how you can toggle back and forth between them. Right now I'm in slot 2, which is the dark black. So I've got my basic checker texture shot straight down, and I'm forcing it to this UV top project. I just want to show you, if I take this and break that, here's my scale, and you can tell that I'm not using the UV top project because I'm getting these seam breaks. If I select this one, that's the correct projection, okay? But when I'm baking this, what I want to do though is not bake to the same UV. I want to bake to this map. So this little camera basically says render to that UV map. So by selecting that, it's going to look wrong. But if I select this, have this this image top projection map, UV map select, I'll be projecting or baking my checker texture, this one, from this UV projection to this one, which is what I want, so that I get the proper layout. I know that's convoluted, but that's the way baking works. It takes a while to figure it out. However, I do want to get that scale on those tiles, and maybe it's a little too, maybe I just want to do 3 to get them a little bigger, since I'm only baking a small texture. So that's set up. Now then I want to bake them to this image, but I also want to make sure that this image, and I can just copy it, this layout UV checkers, is also in my second slot, this black one here. Okay, so one of the problems I was having is that that was causing some issues too in terms of the baking. So now I've got that image in both of my materials, and all I need to do to bake it is make sure that I have it selected in both, in case there's any other images in them. And I want to make sure that it's up in my render window here. And then I'm baking to this UV map, which is my correct layout. And I'm baking from top UV project. And just to make sure that it goes quick and check that we've done everything correctly, I've gone and set my render samples at 16 so it bakes quick. So we can check it that way. Let's do bake. So it goes pretty quickly down here. And if everything turns out right, we should get a pretty good UV layout. Nope, see, what I've done is I've baked that projection, the top UV projection. So I had my selection order wrong, and that's okay. I can go back to here. I need to select, oh yeah, I changed the order. I was baking this. I needed to bake from, I needed to bake from this top projection to the UV map, the proper layout. So this is the one that I'm baking to, and I'm baking from this projection. Try that again. Do this one. So it's counterintuitive to what you would imagine. So in other words, when it's saying here active render set map is active for rendering, basically that's the one that's active that I'm baking from, and then by selecting whatever the alternate map is, that's the one that I'm baking to. Again, I know that's confusing. You can always just do one and the other, but they should be, one should be set for render, one should be set for selected in terms of baking to it. Alright, so there is our map, and that's where we can crank up our render quality, leave our selection the same, and just go to baking, crank this up to 128, and maybe we make our light a little bit softer on the shadow. Right now it's kind of hard. And we can just do that with the angle. D24 bounces. And I'll just soften it up a little bit. The other thing is I want to think about having a, even though it's a black background, I may want to add a environment input just to kind of give it some different color and a little more warmth. So I'll do Control T on this, and it goes all red because we don't have an image loaded yet. let's go to our equirectangular. I'm going to use my go-to, the sky's on fire. And because that'll add kind of a pinkish hue to it. And if we do that, trying to figure out if I want to go with that lighting scenario. So let's just rotate it. Get it from that angle. Alright, we'll see how that goes. This may take longer on the render too. Let's just check what happens when we bake it at lower res. Let's go back to, shading, baking. I'm still going to do 16. Let's see. Also lost my shadowing, but yeah, it looks okay. Yeah, these look pretty good. Okay, so what I will do is change the strength of my environment to something a little darker so I get some of the shadowing back. And go back to objects. Now I'll crank up the quality. I'm going to go ahead and save. And then I'll bake. Alright, so we have our image baked finally. Let's save that. So when you see this little asterisk next to the image, you know you need to save it. If you don't, when you open this thing up, it'll be gone. So image, save as. I'm going to call this baked checker lighting. PNG 8-bit, that's fine. Save it, yeah, that'll be fine. Alright, there it is, and we can go and fix our baking now, or put this to the material. So we're in slot 1, we can lose this, take this and put it in to base color. It's a little off because our UV map is wrong. We want to use that one. There's our baked lighting. We can literally turn the light off now. We still have our shadows, and the same with the sky. In fact, we should break our sky connection now and just go with a flat color. Crank it up to 1. So you get an idea of how this is going to work. Go back to our object. We have our texture going into the color channel, and we're using this UV map. So for efficiency, we don't, let's go ahead and save. We don't need this top-down projection anymore, so we can just lose that. That way we only have one UV map, one texture. Truthfully, we don't need that second material either, so we can lose that. And that because we've still got the black as part of the texture map, and it's still using the UVs. Now we can take our specular down so that we don't have any material messing with our color and our material properties, and then take the roughness probably up. Clear coat. Alright, that's good. And there's our object. So before we export this, let's save. I want to show you that we want So say this is a more complicated object than it is, a scene. We may not want some of these more, the walls or the roofs, in this case, this object, this plane here, to be a collision mesh. So what we can do is just duplicate the object. I've just made a copy. So this is our check ground, and this will be our walk mesh. We'll hide the ground, keep the walk mesh, and go into modeling now. So I'm on walk mesh, and basically I want to delete everything face-wise that I don't care to have walkable. So I'm going to delete that. Everything else I will leave, but what I do want to do delete those faces, and now we have a simplified collision or walk mesh that's super low poly. And what we can do is we can just lose this material and make a new material for it. So I'll go back to object mode. I'm gonna take this off, make it doesn't even need a material. I just want to make something different so that we can show how it can be raised. So walk matte. I'm going to make it blue, so it'll just help us see it a little bit easier in Spoke. Alright, now if we unhide our check ground, you can see that we have this walk mesh that covers everywhere that we want to walk, and none of the roofs, none of the bottom surfaces. So we can export that separately. Save that. So now we want to export the check ground. So File, Export, GLTF. Under Include, choose Selected Objects, and we will save it to the same folder. We'll call it, yeah, whatever. Wonderland's fine. Let's do platform. And exports. Okay, and then we can select the walk mesh itself and do the same thing. Export, GLTF, include, selected. Call this walk Wonderland walk mesh. Okay. Now we have both of those as GLBs. We can open Spoke, get started, make a new project. I suggest we go with this wide open spaces, just so that we have a blank canvas, so to speak. It will have one object, this wide open space grid GLB. We can lose that. And then I will go to My Assets, Upload, go to 3D Models, and we want Wonderland Platform first. It's importing. Drag it into the worlds. It's taking a second to res. Okay, so there's our baked lighting start platform. Let's pull it up so that the ground or the starting point is at the grid and somewhat under our spawn points here. So right now our grid is snapping on the point on the 5, so I can just pull that a little bit down to the ground, and that's fine. Then I want to import or upload the walk mesh. So it'll take a little less time to import. Put it in the same spot. Now it's going to be slightly offset. Just get it shifted. You can literally copy the position if you want from one to the other. So this thing's position is at, let's just make it 0. So it's 0, 0, 0. And then the walk mesh can be exactly the same. If not, a little bit raised depending on your preference. So there's that. Walk mesh we want to be collidable, walkable. We don't want it to cast a shadow, and we want to hide it visibility wise. Then our object mesh, we don't want it to be collidable, we don't want it to be walkable. We may want it to cast a shadow, and we may want it to receive in case we want to create additional shadows with lights. So let me show you how to add a light. If you go to elements, do a spot, and let's put it here. Just drag it, not a spot, sorry. Spotlight is sort of more of a projector kind of light. Let's delete. I wanted a point light. And pull that there. Let's turn on shadows up here in our shadows pull down. Oh, and in the background I have this skybox, and I basically want to take the luminance to black, and it's weird, it goes in the opposite direction. I'm not sure why. Like making the luminance higher makes it darker. But another way to do this is to just take the time of day and shift the sun to the back side of the planet so that we get dark sky. And actually, let's go. So it's like 24-hour time, military time, so 12 would be. It's weird. 12's like sunset, which means 17 or so will be on the opposite side. We also have this directional light right now that's casting shadows. You can see where it's casting certain shadows. We could use it to, we could change its direction. Depending on how we want. Let's see, Z to no, X. I'm trying to figure out which direction it's even rotating. So that's looking down. And then that's, so I think we wanted to aim over this way. Turn on the shadow casting. So I'm trying to check it here. To compare it to what we had. So there, and want to move it that way. So that'll put it in the right place so that everything else catches light based on the way our shadows were baked. So now it's in the right position, the sunlight is at least, and we can, if we want, we can increase the shadow map resolution. We don't necessarily have to. I'll kind of leave it where it's at to again save on space. I did add this point light. I just wanted to show you that it's also casting some light. but it's not affecting our material. However, if we add an object like, let's do, just to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about, we could add, let's add one of my assets, and I want to add something that sort of lights well, but that is small. So let's add this column, one of these. Let's add this one. So it's getting light from this source light, and it will receive light from our platform, because it's casting and receiving shadows. And our light now, our point light, you can see is actually affecting that object, and it'll sort of affect the ground. I think perhaps the walk mesh, yeah, it's walkable, it's not casting a shadow. The point light is acting a little strange. Let me zoom in on it. Let's make it intensity is based on scale, so I'm making it brighter. There's some shadow weirdness going on, I think, because this is casting. Which no, you want it to cast because you want it to cast across this. So I'm thinking that the directional light needs some more shadow bias. Or the shadow radius. Huh. It's not even affecting it that much. It's not that. I guess its ability to receive, it could cast, but maybe it doesn't need to receive since the light's already baked, although then it won't receive the shadows from the point light. So we'll do receive. We'll crank up our point lights shadow map, and there's the range. So you can create kind of a how far will it go kind of a range, and increase the bias just a little. That's what's causing the 0.01. Notice that cleaned up that point. And the shadow radius, we'll have to make this cast a shadow in order to check it. We don't want it walkable, but we might want it collidable. But yeah, we'll make it collidable. Cast shadow. You can see how the light is causing it to cast a shadow. The point lights. And let's make the range a little bigger. This point light doesn't seem to want to cast a shadow. Anyway, we'll add a color to it. Make it kind of a bluish color. And leave that for now. It's got a really big range that we don't really need. The less it needs to be calculated, the better. And let me turn off the directional light just to see if our point light does not seem to be lighting the grounds. Maybe because the intensity the range doesn't seem to affect it. That's weird because it's like somehow its position is off. I can't tell what's going on. But did you notice that when I turn on cast shadow, it's like it self-shadows. And when I don't have it on, there's some sort of a bug or something there. I'm not sure what. But so if it's no cast shadow, then let's just turn that down. So I'm not sure why points are causing a problem. Let's crank up the brightness to create a little more effect. To see what's, yep, somehow that's, I don't get it. Anyway, so there's a light. Let's go ahead and see this, and let me turn on my directional light. And let me make a platform up here. I just want to add one more media element. So if you want to add images or videos, you can upload them here. In this case, I want to add this equirectangular image here. And what I can do, if I hit F, is make it bigger, scale it up, and an equirectangular, like any sky, I can make it round, and it becomes an environment that I can walk into on this platform. Alright, so I've added this image in just to show that you could add some media. This could also just be a video as well. It can be an audio element if you wanted to add that in. If you, let me see here, if you go under elements, you see things that you can add links, dynamically linked to stuff for playback. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like you can do YouTube time links. So I'll add this here. So this is a link. Right now it's flat projection, or we can put it on equirectangular. So I'm going to delete this. I'll make this a YouTube equirectangular. Oops. So we can get a sense of the scale, scale it up to the size that we want, position it, and make that link. So let's go to YouTube. Walkthrough, cool, that'll work. Alright, so let's grab that link and put it in here. It's thinking about it. Autoplay, loop. So it's got a panning audio mode. We can crank the volume down. Let's pause this and just check. So you can change the mode of how it's linked up. So the cone inner angle, cone outer angle, in terms of the way it's shaped. So here's our video, the start frame. Oh, this is our audio settings for the distance model on the audio type. So, controls, autoplay. Let's just leave all that set to default. And I'm just going to pull it up and put it in the center. And maybe we want to rotate it so that, you know, whatever this I'm assuming this is the center frame, is facing towards our viewer as they go inside. Alright, so on top of that, let's see, that's good. You can add text, or you can add images as text. So you can add an image, and that would be how you do your text. You can do a link to another Hubs room. A spawner for spawning objects, which would come from somewhere like Sketchfab. All of this stuff, if it's some sort of a link to something, has to be hosted somewhere, instead of if you want to include it and embed it so that it loads when the scene loads, you'd put it in your assets and load images, videos, audio that way. But that's going to increase the size of your scene on load, so it can take a while. Just checking to see if there's anything else. So what we'll do is we'll put a spawn point, no, a waypoint here inside. So a waypoint is basically kind of it's like a spawn point. It can be a spawn point if you want to toggle that. And it can be clickable. You can disable motion. You can disable teleporting out of it. So it's a way of sort of locking people into a position and making them have to go from waypoint to waypoint, which you'd have to hit spacebar when in Hubs to do it. I'll show you that in a minute. But we'll leave it. You can also make it change the orientation or maintain the initial orientation when you teleported to it. So we'll leave that, and I'll put another one just to show. Yeah, we'll put one over here at the column. Right there. Same thing, occupiable, clickable. That's good. And now the last thing before we export, let's go ahead and save. Let's call this Wonderland. And before we save, we need to recalculate the floor plan, i.e. the walk mesh that we've hidden. We want to use this floor plan right here to calculate a collision mesh so that we can walk. So basically, let's just regenerate. We're going to probably have a problem. We want to use force try mesh and regenerate. And you'll see where it's gone and created a collision mesh based on everything that was walkable and collidable, including the column that we had set up there because we wanted to collide with it. Let's go back. Obviously, that's not efficient to have all those polygons being collision objects. So what we can do instead is add a simple cube and make that collidable instead. So let's click on our column, turn off collidable, and add a simple cube, either from the architecture kit or if you've imported one, you can import like a simple object from I call it like a column, and just put that in the same place. And in this case, I'm just going to use that as a collidable object that'll fit around this column. You can F to center on the object and get it in position. It doesn't have to go super high because if you fly in this, you're going to go through anything that's collidable anyway, so you can just leave it like a little walkable rim around this object and make that collidable. Leave it, don't make it walkable, just disconnect that. And making it collidable, that's fine. Don't want it to cast shadow, don't want it to receive shadow, and we want to hide it. Now if we go back to our floor plane and regenerate, then we just have the collision mesh on that. And with that, we can publish to Hubs. Save it, publish. It's going to take a second to load. So based on the size of your objects and the textures and stuff, your hub scene can take a while to load. So you want to kind of this is where the optimization comes in. Say OK, and then we can open it in Hubs now that it's published there. We'll see how our 360 video works. We want to create a room with that scene. And it's going to load all of our objects. Enter the room. You get avatars and hubs that look like robots or boxes by default, or you can make your own. Your choice. I've got a tutorial on how to make your own Hubs avatar if you want. They're basically pretty simple. So I'm going to select this simple box, accept, enter on screen. If you have goggles, you can enter the goggles. I'm going to mute my microphone. Enter. So it's loaded. And seems almost as though the shadows are coming from the sky. You can see off on the horizon that we have the sky, and that does cast light and shadow, so it may be that that's what's causing this shadowing on the ground. I'm also getting some weird lag and play, but I want to show you that if you hit spacebar, you'll see your teleport point, and if you click on it, it'll take you there. So that took me to the column, and let me close this. It may be because I'm recording this is why it's taking its own sweet time. But to show you that you can walk, you may not be able to walk on all of this. Let me go small with this so that we can try to speed this up a little bit. I don't know why my frame, it's got to be because I'm recording video. That helped a little bit. See, I can't walk up this plank because the slope's too high, and that's where I basically have regenerated, done my regeneration on my floor plan, and my maximum slope is at 45 degrees. Basically crank that up to like 70. And then regenerate. And then save. and publish. It also may be that I'm hitting YouTube. We'll check out the video and see what happens. So publish, save and publish. So the skybox, I wonder if I can just turn that off. And then the scene, I can just set to black. Yeah, I think I'm going to just go with that because that's one less thing to calculate. You can have a fog if you choose to have it. I'm going to leave it there, and you can also override the audio settings if you click that. Let's see if turning off the skybox helps with it looks like it helps definitely with the shadows. So let's just check it out. Publish. Trying to figure out the shadowing issue. Since I have the lighting baked, I could just turn off shadowing on that on the ground, since that seemed to help it. So let's do that, and we'll make it receive shadows. I did notice I want to move this up so I don't see the column from the bottom. There we go. See, save. Actually, let's make it so that we don't play that video from autoplay. That way, maybe it doesn't load or bog down while it's playing, while somebody that they have to be browsing. So save and publish. View. So you may be thinking, what's Hubs good for? It's like I said, it runs on A-frame. If you want to do, something that's VR and a little more interactive, like you can, if you know JavaScript and you can program, you can definitely do more. I actually have some. Yeah, it's playing much better at full screen. So the video was what was killing it. But yeah, if you want to be able to script something a little more advanced, then you can definitely do better with A-frame, and that's a viable option to doing almost essentially the same thing, except Hubs is already set to allow multi-user interaction. So I can share this room with somebody in VR, invite them into VR. They'll be able to see me. I'll be able to see them. And basically then, because I can see them and they can see me, we can interact with each other. It does audio. It's got all these connections to other inputs. I can load things and talk about things like objects or 3D or other videos, GIFs, whatever, using this. Darn, I went outside. But anyway, I can load pretty much anything and share objects and stuff in Hubs. They're working on a scripting version, but for now, it's just a really great place to meet up in VR and interact with some scene that you made. So in this case, you could do online presentations, like they allow PDFs and PowerPoint slides and things like that. So you can have a virtual conference in Hubs and make your own spaces for it. So it's good for that, and it's pretty easy to set up as well, and it has a lot of different media inputs just even the ability to do this 360 VR and interact with that is a lot. But like I said, if you wanted to, you could actually do very similar things with a lot more programming as far as the multi-user stuff goes in A-frame, since Hubs is based on A-frame. One of the things you may notice here, this weird texture tearing, it's just where I distorted this image, and there's some weird polygonal. Let me just show you how this will look. If I go /debug, you can see the collision mesh, and you can see that there's a triangle running across that's basically taking this cube or this texture and distorting it. And that's all that's happening there. It's just where the triangles are doing their thing. So in Hubs, if you do /debug, that's how you can see the collision mesh and debug if there are any issues. If you want to fly around and not be constrained to the ground, you can tap /fly, and then now I can fly around from one platform to the other. Okay. If I do /fly, then if I start moving, it should constrain me to the ground again. Okay. And there's all kinds of other commands with the / so you can do VR stats, you can rename yourself, you can spawn things, shrink or grow, leave the room, and as a user in the room, this is also how you can chat to the room. And it just pops it in there and it gives you a username. You can see all the objects that may have been loaded into the room, like this, and it gives you the ability to see it. You can see all the users. You can take pictures and tweet them. You can draw things in space, like that. And like I said, you can spawn objects, you can shoot videos, and then up here you can actually change the scene to something else. So if you want to change to one of these, you can load those up, and everybody that's in there, it'll just change the scene on them. So anyway, that's building sort of a pathed platform world in Hubs using Blender objects and all the things that you can do to create kind of a more optimized scene. So if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments.